The history of Fort Lauderdale dates back thousands of years, from the Tuckasee to the Seminoles. Native Tuckasee Indians inhabited the area that became Fort Lauderdale centuries ago. First European contact happened in the 1500s. This led to the introduction of many new diseases that decimated the native populations. Early in the 18th century, Greek Indians moved from Alabama and joined the Oconee to form the Seminole tribes. By 1788, they finally settled in the area that would become Broward County. In 1838, Major William Lauderdale led a detachment of Tennessee volunteers south along the east coast of Florida to capture Seminole lands and to battle the exclusive Indian warriors. 3 forts were built by Lauderdale, one at the New River, the other at Tarpon Bend, and the largest on the beach. The forts were later abandoned and no real settlement activities occurred in the area until 1893, when Frank Stranahan arrived from Melbourne to operate a ferry at the New River. He built several houses, one of which is now a museum and is considered Broward County's oldest standing structure. Eventually, he became known as the first permanent white settler of Fort Lauderdale. Incorporation development in the early years. Fort Lauderdale was incorporated in 1911, and in 1915, it became the county seat for Broward County. The first census of the city occurred in 1920 census and listed a population of 2,065 people. By 1925, the census population had jumped to 5,625 people, and by the end of 1925, over 15,000 people called Fort Lauderdale home. This growth was due to a huge boom in real estate activities in the Miami area and growth of the region in general. During these boom years, the illustrious canals and the Finger Island bordering them came into being. The Depression and World War II. Fort Lauderdale's first major development began in the 1920s during the Florida land boom. Sadly, 1926 was the start of bad times in Fort Lauderdale. The real estate bubble burst and led to massive losses, which was followed by the block adding of ports for several months due to an accident. The 1926 Miami hurricane and the Great Depression of the 1930s caused a great deal of economic dislocation. When World War II began, Fort Lauderdale became a major U.S. Navy base with a naval air station to train pilots, radar and fire control operator training schools, and a Coast Guard base at Port Everglades. After the war ended, service members returned to the area, spurring an enormous population explosion, which drafted the 1920s boom. Today, Fort Lauderdale is a major yachting center, one of the nation's biggest tourist destinations, and the center of metropolitan division of 1.8 million people, or spring breakers and wait-ins. After the war, Fort Lauderdale regained its status as a destination for tourists from all over the country. During the 1950s, the city became the destination for spring break. This peak was the release of the movie Where the Boys Are, which was based on a novel by George Wells about 4 Midwestern college co-eds who spent spring break in Fort Lauderdale. This increased Fort Lauderdale's national profile and led to an even greater influx of students' fun and sun. The beaches of Fort Lauderdale have been segregated since 1927, when officials decreed that blacks could only use a small rocky and weed-strewn section of the north end of the city. By 1961, blacks were tired of inability to enjoy the ocean and started wait-ins where they would enter the water and wait to be arrested. The campaign continued throughout 1961 and led to the city filing suit against the NAACP to try to stop the wait-in.
White people are so scared of black people. They bulldoze out to the country and put up houses on little loopy-loop streets, while America gets a top cut right out of its chest. The Berlin Wall still runs down Main Street, separating east side from west. Nothing is stirring up, even a mouse in the boarded up stores and the broken down houses, so they hang colorful banners off all the street lamps just to prove they got no manners, no mercy and no sense. And I wonder what it will take for my city to rise. First we admit our mistakes, and then we open our
Historical residential segregation. After World War II, the urban ghetto first appeared in industrial communities as a way for the government to improve public housing. Zoning laws divided streets by race, which became the standard method of legally enforcing racial segregation. The result was, and is to this day, a lack in capital in inner city communities, segregated minority neighborhoods, and minority families unable to find affordable housing in the suburbs.
Residential segregation is a multidimensional phenomenon, varying along 5 distinct axes of measurement: evenness, exposure, concentration, centralization, and clustering. Segregation is the link to understanding the perpetuation of urban poverty and is reason to the present lack of affordable housing in safe communities.
Okay, we're in the city of Fort Lauderdale, and we're at the corner of Martin Luther King Jr. and Sistrunk Boulevard, Northwest 6th Street and Northwest 31st Avenue, aka Boulevard Gardens. It's the furthest west of Sistrunk Boulevard.
Here we can see some of the demographics of the city of Fort Lauderdale as of 2011. As you can see, Fort Lauderdale is an increasingly growing city in population, possibly reaching about 2.2 million people by the year 2030. Just below that, we can see some of the race demographics. The city is predominantly white at 48%, with about 24% black and 23% Hispanic. As well as education seems to have a very even distribution in regards to 27% have an associate's degree or some college, and 30% have a high school degree, bachelor's degree, advanced degree, and no high school diploma make up the rest of the percentages here.
We just stopped by the Sustainable Development Center here in Fort Lauderdale, and we talked about for developing plannings and all this stuff that, we're the beautification process of Fort Lauderdale, of Sistrunk in particular. We're also trying to make it a more improved environment by putting solar panels on homes and on rooftops. Okay, so you can see that this is all modernizing the whole city, right? So we're moving from Sistrunk to Las Olas. So we're moving, in Sistrunk you see more of the poor neighborhoods, more of the, the bus stops that run down, a whole bunch of bail bonds. We don't see any banks.
We spoke with Mr. Bob Warshak, the Economics Reinvesting Coordinator and Planner for the Department of Sustainable Development in Fort Lauderdale regarding recent plans for area and residential development in the Northwest Progresso area or Sistrunk area of the city of Fort Lauderdale. He gave us a brief history on the area, including how past roads were reconstructed to eliminate all on-road parking for businesses on Sistrunk Boulevard. That created a detrimental snowball effect that caused the majority of businesses to close down on the main road. The road was also made so that people could drive through the area just to get to the city center or downtown area of Fort Lauderdale. This was specifically designed to segregate both race and class into one small Northwest regional area.
An urban planner of Fort Lauderdale, Bob Warshak, says that there are segregating patterns predominantly in the northwest of Fort Lauderdale. To the west of the railroad tracks, there is African American communities, and to the east of the tracks, there are any other races other than African American communities settling there.
Affordable and workforce housing. What is affordable housing? It is households earning less than 80% of the area's average median income of $58,200. According to the 2005 census, the average household income for the residents of Fort Lauderdale was $37,887.
The Community Redevelopment Agency, or CRA to make it short, have been working on implementing new redevelopment programs. In 2009, the Northeast Northwest Sistrunk Boulevard Streetscape and Enhancement Project was implemented. It included new sidewalks, new street lamps, more parking on the main road, new building redevelopments, and new traffic patterns that would ease traffic on this road. This is a $15 million street project that was met with much adversity by City Commissioner Rodstrom in 2005. He was opposed to the main area redevelopment and was also opposed to having street parking back on the main Sistrunk Boulevard. This was also tied into the fact that the county controlled the actual main street, allowing the county to have final say in any approved redevelopment programs that the city would try to implement.
One possible option to end residential segregation is to increase affordable housing options in suburban communities. State and local governments could create new zoning laws that could regulate land use and development for low and moderate income residences.
Urban planners and economic investment coordinators are trying to rebuild the city of Sistrunk. But their biggest challenge yet is that no one is willing to open business in the area. This is an issue for the evolution of Sistrunk because without business, there are no jobs for the people in the area. But, on the other hand, the developers of Las Olas advertise the fact that the booming city is a mecca for job opportunities.
In regards to housing and residential developments, Mr. Warshik also explained his neighborhood improvement plan through income-controlled housing. Some people referred to this in the past as project housing. They are redeveloping project housing and turning them into semi-luxurious residences like Progresso Point. The city is also contributing to the future CRA plans for housing by receiving about $11 million annually until 2025 from tax revenue of some new high-end townhomes and condos that are being built in the city. So far, since the housing redevelopment push, the area has redone over 1,000 units with the help of private developers and city funding. All new public housing developments will also have a heavy focus on sustainability and green technology.